floor is yours.
Respected Toastmasters and guests, everybody says that the economies today are majorly defined by the geopolitics, geography of the region. And the recent war between Russia and Ukraine is one such example. In this speech, I will bring you some stark examples of economies and countries which have planned their defenses, their foreign relations, and even internal relationships among one another because of the geography which it holds. Starting with the country Russia, it was a rumor that, and everybody have heard, that President Vladimir Putin is a big religious man. And when he was about to become a president, or when he was young, he must have prayed to God that God, please, you should have kept some mountains on the western part between the Russia and Ukraine. Why is that? The western part between the Russia and the European Union is plain. It doesn't have any mountains. It is prone to attack. Russia is defenseless on the border around Ukraine, Poland, and it has been acting ever since because of this reason. Their main tactics in war with Ukraine is attack is the best defense. It dates back to the history when Russia was a formidable organization named as the Soviet Union, and to counterattack this, the European countries along with US and Canada formed the Northern Atlantic Treaty, NATO. At that time, many European countries were opposing Russia, were opposing NATO, and were pro-Russian. But over the years, many countries, starting from Poland, the Baltic states, Ethiopia, Lithuania, have become part of NATO. And that is a warning sign for Russia. Once Ukraine becomes a part of NATO, US and other North Atlantic states, which are, by the way, 28 countries in total, will have a greater influence and power over the region in the Russia. Russia is by far the biggest country, and it has 11 time zones with 3 major rivers, seas, but its population is declining. It has 8.25% of population density, which is least of the major world states. Why is that, you may wonder? Most of its north, east and south is frozen. It has frozen ports. There are limited opportunities of employment for people in Russia. So that's why it is strongly critical about this Ukraine territory. It also provides Russia the access to its only non-freezing port. Russia is by far really worried about its access to the Black Sea and the Baltic Sea. It is because the Black Sea provides a very important territorial advantage for the natural resources of Russia. By the way, Russia is only second in the exports of oil and natural gas, only behind United States. There is hardly any reason for Russia to be worried about its territory from south, north, or east, because the geography doesn't allow anyone to invade from that way. Only the western end of Russia is prone to attack. Anyone from Poland, which is a pro-American, pro-NATO state, can invade into the heartland of Russia. Coming into the next state, United States. Mark Twain once said that if there is a lottery, he would like to go to this state, United States. Why is that? Why do you think United States is the world's top country? It has $20.3 trillion of gross domestic product, GDP. Only second to it, China has $14.2 trillion of GDP. The reason behind it is its immaculate geography. On the north, you can see the Canadian shield, which inhibits anyone to invade because of the freezing atmosphere there. On the east, we have Appalachian Mountains, which had inhibited the European countries to invade in the late 16th century. Great Britain thought that the virgin territory of United States, the eastern coast of US, when it was not very highly developed, they wanted to invade through the east coast. They wanted to sail through the Arctic Ocean. But the geopolitics and the geography of that region, the harsh climatic conditions didn't allow them to colonize much. Still, United States did had the issue of being dominated by Spain, France, until the last century. They recently bought Louisiana from France because it was one of the situations where United States wanted to secure its border. There are three main regions in US which determines its geography. The eastern Appalachian Mountains, if you go far west, you have the Mississippi River Basin, which allows great amount of trade from the northern states to the Gulf of Mexico. And if you go towards the east, in mid 19th century, there was a gold rush in California, and all the natural reservoirs forced people to immigrate to US. Why would anyone want to go to any other place where people used to get free land and plethora of opportunities? United States had thus been blessed with great geography. If you see in the southwest, there is a desert which has made little hindrance towards its relationship with Mexico. But when US started to follow to expand its territory and strengthen its alliance with the different countries after the Second World War, there was no turning back. United States has thus took advantage of its geography in its most scintillating form. Coming into Africa. Africa is one of the first country which was known to have the presence of Homo sapiens. 200,000 years back, it is still far behind any other country. Africa is second most largest continent in the world. It is 58, it is a total of 58 countries, but there is hardly any economic growth as far as other countries are concerned. The rivers in Africa doesn't allow it to a smooth sailing trade between the countries. The reason behind is that every mile if you go in the Nile River or any other river in Africa, you will find waterfalls. And this is one of the minor issues in Africa. There are hilly terrains and people have found it hard to begin trade. And when the West and the East were booming with the trade, there was not much trade in Africa because of the only reason of its geography. European countries were able to exert their dominance on the countries because of its rich natural reservoirs. If you see this country, Democratic Republic of Congo, it is 175th in its GDP. It has been under a lot of demand for its natural reservoirs. If you search on the internet the natural reservoirs of Democratic Republic of Congo, you will be shocked on how many countries depend upon its investment from these countries. But many countries have tried to take advantages from the African states. For example, Egypt, which is the most populous and economic regional power in Africa, is dependent upon Ethiopia for its water resources. There are many issues in the African subcontinent which doesn't allow it to grow as fast as any other continent in the world. Last, I will talk about Europe. The European Union is by far a part of 28 countries. If you exclude Denmark from it, it has been an organization of countries which have decided to cooperate for a while, but their cooperation is not going as they had anticipated. Why is that? After World War II, European countries were exhausted. They didn't have enough investment to pour on their defenses. That is the reason why NATO was formed, and which led to a drastic decline in the industrialization of Europe, which we had seen in the beginning of 18th century. If you see the geography of Europe, you will see a disconnect between countries. There is a greater source of nationalism in the countries of Europe than what we see in the states of United States. You would wonder why there were 28 countries in Europe. Why couldn't they form a union of states the way United States had formed? The reason because there was natural barriers between these regions which didn't allow it to form a unified country. For example, if you see Germany, which is located on the southern area of the European Union, is divided by the tributaries of the river from France on the west, from the southwest, and thus each country here, if you consider Netherlands, Amsterdam, Hamburg, all these places have been isolated from other because of the geographical limitations. There are mountains, there are rivers which naturally divides the country, and that was the reason why if you go from one region to another, you will find people with different bilingual languages spoken. The geography has led to a lot of distress among the countries. For example, Germany, which had crushed after the World War II, is fourth most economic country in the world right now. Its economic exports are booming, and it has caused the other major giant, France, to be worried about the dominance of Germany. Even though they try to share a good partnership with one another, but Russia's location has been a major advantage to Germany, because Germany is dependent upon Russia for its oil reserves. The Nord Stream 2 is where Germany allows Germany has its imports from Russia. Even though Germany is starkly located between the Russia and France, it has advantage just because it is close to Russia. Even though Germany has alliance with the NATO, but it does also have a plan B if things doesn't work out. If you consider the example of Great Britain, one of the reasons why it got out of the European Union was the immigration laws, the geography of that region, and it wanted to ascertain that the losses of other European countries didn't hamper its own progress. Coming on to other countries in the Europe, Spain, it is restricted by its geographical limitations. For example, if you consider Spain, it is surrounded by the ocean from all its sides, which restricts its chances to maintain a healthy trade between different countries. Now, to summarize it, like why countries have different obligations towards maintaining a foreign relationship, an ardent geopolitics does play a major role. If you see countries in Asia, China and India have just fallen into war just once in 1960s, and despite their growing economies, why haven't they fought more often? Why their regions have decided to maintain peace? It is because of the wide range of Himalayas, which restricts them to spend a lot on their defenses. Many ideologies, many facts throughout the world are governed by the geography of that region. Considering the relationship of China with Taiwan or Russia with Ukraine, or if you consider the war between Iraq and Syria in the past, all those you will find the root in the geography of that region. So I would like to conclude by saying that there are countries which have had the advantage of a great geographical terrain, which had helped them to get ahead of other countries. And there are some countries which have had the limitations of poor geographic terrain. But keep in mind that any geographic terrain, may it be river, mountain, plateau or anything, not one is better than other, but any particular consequence due to absence of any particular geographical terrain, whether it may be lowland areas or higher mountainous regions, it has starkly affected history and an indication that man is not above the nature. We are slaves and we are just a small part of this humongous natural reservoir. Thank you.